I was driving home from work about a year ago. It was very late at night and I was driving on a quiet road. It usually took me about 20 minutes to arrive back, and this drive was no exception. After exiting the highway, I drove on a quiet road for about 5 miles. This road is mostly woodland on both sides. When I was driving down this road, I noticed the blue and red flashing lights ahead. I assumed the police had pulled someone over or something. The closer I got, the better I could see. I soon discovered that there was this guy standing on the side of the road. He was wearing a safety vest and looked like an actual police officer. I slowed down and soon got much closer. However, the car with the flashing lights did not appear to be a police vehicle. It appeared to be a regular car, but with the flashing lights on. As I approached, the man standing on the road started to step over, and I slowed even more. He then signaled for me to stop, and I did. I was really intrigued about what this was, especially that the area was fairly rural with woods on both sides of the road. After stopping, I rolled down my window to talk to the guy. He had dark hair and had a black cap on and jacket with vest. He also had a very bright flashlight that he aimed at me. He said hi and then told me his name, which I couldn't remember. The man spoke a bit too fast and said that they were just carrying out searches around here. It seems that this was also happening on other nearby roads. I wasn't quite sure what he meant, so I asked why. He said that there had been some criminal activity in the area. I asked him if he was a police officer, and he said no, he wasn't a police officer, but he said he worked for the police department. He then asked if he may inspect the back of my car and told me to unlock the back doors and trunk. He started to move back and was going to grab the back door handle. I said no and hit the gas, driving away from him. I heard him tell me to wait as I left him standing in the middle of the road. I suspected the guy was pulling a scam or something. Who knew what he'd do if I unlocked the car for him? He didn't give me any actual information but skimmed over everything. I immediately called 911 and reported him to the police.
911, what's your emergency?
I was told that an officer would go to the location and check it out. After that, I finished my drive home. I made it back, and I was truly hoping that nobody else stopped for that guy. I'm not sure what his plans were. Claiming that there was illegal activity in the area was extremely broad, unless he was referring to himself. It really felt like a terrible lie to trick me into opening my doors. I haven't been in similar situations since then, and I really hope that the police got the man. My friend Mark and I decided to call it a night after a long busy night at the bar. He was dropping me off at my house, and the poorly lighted road went through the dark woods. The only thing cutting through the night was the narrow beam of Mark's headlights. As we drove down the long, lonely road, our laughing faded into an unpleasant silence. There, in the middle of the road, lay a decapitated deer. We assumed it had been the victim of a gruesome road accident. Should we move it off the road? Mark suggested, bringing the car to a stop. I agreed and we stepped out of the car. As we got closer to the deer, this creepy cold feeling washed over me. The moon's dim light revealed severe wounds in the deer's body that were not indicative of accident injuries. It looked like it had been mercilessly slaughtered. While we're standing there, freaked out, we hear this unmistakable sound of rushing footsteps coming from the darkness. Our first reaction was that it had to be an animal, but the footsteps sounded strange, too intentional and steady. "Turn on your flashlight," I yelled at Mark, wanting to find out what was causing the strange movement. But Mark hesitated, his worry nagging at him. What if it's a bear or something? We don't want to attract it with the light. But I couldn't resist, so I flick on my phone's flashlight and scan the woods around us. The light only revealed the blackness of the trees. Nothing moved, not even a squirrel. I called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" Everything remained strangely silent. The tension grew. The footsteps got closer. This time, we knew it's not just our imagination. There was no doubt that someone was approaching. And then a low, guttural cough resonated through the trees. And I swear that made the hairs on my neck stand up straight. I pointed the flashlight at the sounds, feeling my heart pounding. And what do I see? The head of that deer abandoned on the roadside with bloodstains everywhere. It seemed like someone's cut it off on purpose rather than a road accident. It was a terrifying sight, and the dreadful feeling that we weren't alone became greater. Suddenly, another head was thrown at us from the woods, this one dripping with fresh blood. It splattered us as it hit the ground. Mark and I rushed back to the car in terror, our hearts racing. We didn't dare to look back. Our inclination was to get as far as we possibly could. We sped away, leaving that messed up scene behind. We were shook to our cores by the frightening experience, and there was no logical explanation for what we had witnessed. I couldn't catch a wink of sleep at night. The whole thing kept playing on a loop in my head like a never-ending horror movie. Every time I tried to shut my eyes, I was right back on that creepy road, surrounded by darkness and the echoes of those unsettling footsteps. It left me feeling seriously spooked, tossing and turning all night long. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't shake off that sense of dread. The next morning, my curiosity got the best of me and I returned to the area. You may not believe it, but I swear there was no sign of the horrible bloodstains, deer, or heads anywhere. It was as if the horrors of that night had never happened, but that night left me seriously freaked out and wondering what the heck actually went down in those woods. Mark and I never even talked about it afterward, like we both wanted to pretend it never happened. It was about 4 in the morning one Saturday, and I was driving to work down the highway. I was in the middle lane, going pretty quickly, trying to make up for being late. So when I saw a car in my left mirror catching up pretty quickly, I was almost alarmed. I had to already be going like 75 to 80, so he had to be going anywhere from 90 to 100. The car caught up to me fast. It was a grey Honda Accord coupe. I took a look into the car, curious to see who was behind the wheel. Even though it was still dark out, I could see the driver looking back at me as he overtook. Then I noticed someone in the backseat too. It was a young woman who appeared to be banging on the back window. Initially, I didn't quite get it. I assumed it was a girl messing around or whatever. It's usually not a person's first instinct to jump to dark conclusions. But when I saw the driver shove her down under the window while the car swerved, I knew something was wrong. That woman was trying to get someone's attention and call for help. I picked up the pace a bit and got behind them so I could keep up. I could see the driver repeatedly reach to the back of the car with a swinging motion. It looked like he was hitting her. I could see her arms flailing in the back of the car. I was in complete shock. I was actually witnessing a kidnapping right before my eyes. While I was behind them, matching their speed of about 95 miles per hour, I pulled out my phone and called 911. As I was on the phone, the car in front of me hit the brakes and he started to slow down to a gradual stop. He definitely clocked that I saw what was going on and thought that I was following him. As much as I wanted to intervene and save that woman's life, I had no idea if the driver was armed with a gun or not. So I pulled around him and floored it. I wanted to keep behind them though, so I pulled off the next exit but didn't go entirely up the exit ramp. I waited for the car to pass by down the highway before I drove over the grass and back onto the highway and began to floor it to catch up to the car, all while still talking to 911, telling them where we were, what kind of car they were in, how fast we were going. I was easily hitting 90 again to catch up to them. As I caught up to the car again, going at an insane speed, the driver spotted me again even before I got too close. He started to brake in front of me again. I tried to maneuver around him, but he blocked me off, forcing me to stop. He jumped out from his car and started running towards mine with something in his hand. In a panic, I threw my car into reverse until he stopped chasing me. Then I shifted back into drive before he could get back in his car and drove quickly past him. The 911 operator told me there was a state trooper not far ahead from our location and to just keep driving until I passed him. The man in the car behind me kept following me, both of us still going at an insane 90 miles per hour plus. I felt the weight of 1,000,000 pounds released off my shoulders when the flashing blue and red lights appeared in my rearview mirror behind the car chasing me. With me in front of him and the cop behind him, he didn't have much maneuverability and he quickly pulled over onto the grass. I pulled over in front of him, but with at least 2 cars worth of space between us, because I still didn't know how this was about to go down. Luckily, the cop with his gun drawn got the guy out of the car with his hands up. By then, I stepped out and watched the whole thing. He was in cuffs now, laying face down on the ground. Another police car showed up and another cop entered the scene. The woman in the back of the car was let out. She was badly beaten, in tears and extremely ecstatic to be saved as she kept praising me for saving her life. Turns out, the driver of the car was her ex-boyfriend who had come to her house, and when she refused to talk to him, he attacked her, grabbed her, and threw her in the back of his car, which had the child locks on. It's scary to think where he might have been taking her or what he was planning to do to her if I or anybody else didn't witness her screaming for help in the back of the car.